everybody, welcome back to the DDC Studios YouTube channel. This is DDC Studios owner and publisher Dave Hayner, and today's video is actually part one of a little two-part video series I thought would be kind of fun to do. And it has to do kind of with the mini-comic aesthetic. I know we talked about in an earlier video about your creator voice, your creative voice, or your creative aesthetic. But this is more of a broader look at mini comics in general, and more looking kind of at the fact that mini comics are kind of the last vestige, I guess you call it, of the punk rock comic book aesthetic. It's been a widely held belief for, pretty much since the dawn of punk rock itself, is that comic books were a little punk rock, because they weren't what you'd consider mainstream, at least, when we're talking late 70s, early 80s. But as comic books got more and more mainstream, as the 80s and then the 90s rolled on, the indie comic, and specifically the self-published comics, which are kind of the natural growth of the underground comics movement, kind of took up that mantle of the punk rock aesthetic of comic books. But pretty much during that whole time, in my opinion, the real punk rock, I guess you call it the real punk rock aesthetic, was that of the world of the mini comic. Because the one thing that anybody that's a fan of punk music can tell you is one of the big deals about punk rock music is the DIY, the do-it-yourself feel of the music, of the record releases, just everything. And nothing encapsulates the DIY spirit of comic books than mini comics. As I keep saying, there is absolutely no middleman from beginning to end. You write it, you draw it, you print it up, you collate the pages, you staple them together, and you package them and ship them out. And it doesn't get more do-it-yourself than that. And that's really, I guess you'd say, the first half of why mini comics have such a strong punk rock aesthetic. The other reason is quite frankly, especially with what's gone on this past week in both mainstream and indie comics, is much like the original punk rock artists, you can't really cancel a mini comic artist. We're able to pretty much do and say whatever the heck we darn well please. I apologize, that was my way of kind of throwing in a little humor, censoring myself there. But it is true. I always joke, like on social media with the hashtag can't cancel mini comics, because you can't. Just like Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols and Glenn Danzig, the original lead singer of the Misfits, and that kind of feel, we can say and do what we please, what we think, without any fear, I guess you would say. And that's kind of cool. We're allowed to tell the stories, that we want to tell. Sorry about that. That was actually my work phone bleeding in, getting yet one of those fine telemarketer calls. I apologize, folks. But anyway, getting back to the fact that we're able to tell whatever story we want to, on any subject we want to. It's one of the wonderful things, as I always say, of being a niche of a niche when it comes to comic books. Because we really don't have to worry about throwing a super wide net if we don't want to. If we want to, we can, but we don't have to. So that's kind of the beautiful thing, because now what I'm getting ready to do is I am not saying any of our books or what we do actually compares to these legendary punk bands. I'm not doing that. I'm just kind of using them as analogies. But really, when it comes to stuff that DDC Studios makes, it's more of your pop punk, if you will, or your Ramones. Is a really good way of putting it. Where you get other guys like Rex Doom, which if you do not follow Rex on Twitter at Rex Doom, for the love of God, do it. This guy is making some of the coolest, truly punk mini comics I have ever seen, and he is most definitely good old-fashioned old school Misfits, because it is horror punk, up the wazoo, if you will. But then you have, some of the really early guys. Anybody that talks to me, I constantly sing the praises of this very little-known Iowa-based mini comic series that oh my gosh, Dano, the creator, hasn't done an issue in like over 2 decades. It was called Staple Genius, and for the love of God, it was the Sex Pistols. It was tried and true, 100% down and dirty punk rock comics. He even had a punk rock character in the book, for the love of God. But it was in my purview of mini comics. It was the mini comic that started it all, so I always kind of equate it with the Sex Pistols. And you see that's, once again, with as many subgenres, if you will, of punk rock, you'll see that many in the world of mini comics. And once, to kind of summarize, that's really why, to me, mini comics are the last bastion of that punk rock feel that comic books always used to have. Because even the indies, God love them, but the vast majority of them are kind of smoothing off the edges, if you will, and rounding those corners to try to make their products a little more palatable to places like Netflix, and the movie studios trying to get that development deal. And trust me, there is no mini comic artist in the world that's trying to get their property made into a movie, because we're making comics to make comics, and unfortunately you see that less and less in the indie world, and you most definitely really don't see any of that in truly mainstream comics. So like I said, maybe this episode really wasn't as informative as my past videos really have been, and I'm here to tell you the video we put up for part 2 probably won't be quite as informative either, but it was just something I really felt was important to get off my chest and get out there on YouTube to maybe hopefully start kind of a dialogue with some of my fellow mini comic creators. So that is going to do it for this week's episode, but like I always say, please, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and this video and the next video especially, please, 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 leave a comment down below. What's your take on mini comics? I'd love to hear if you think I'm totally off base and, I'm totally ridiculous. What are you talking about? Mini comics have nothing to do with punk rock. Or if you totally agree, or whatever in between. Please leave a comment below, because I would really, really like to get a conversation going about this. I think this could lead to some really strong growth for the industry of mini comics, and really that's what I'm all about. I want to make our small, teeny tiny comics some of the biggest deals going. So, like always, thank you so much for listening, and you can check out in the description below if you are interested in checking out any of the mini comics that DDC Studios currently has in print, just hit that Webstore link below where we have every single mini comic available. We've got bundles, we've got sketch cards, you got sketch covers for comic books, you name it, we've got it. You can also check out the official DDC Studios t-shirt store, where you can pick up an official DDC Studios logo shirt, an official domain logo shirt, and also a Black Owl emblem shirt. They're available in all sizes, and they're just $20 a piece. And also, please feel free to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We post almost on a daily basis, usually multiple times a day, and it's pretty much all nonsense and tomfoolery. So if you give us a follow on there, I guarantee you we'll follow you back. So, as always, thanks a lot for listening. We've got the part 2 of this little mini comic aesthetic video series coming at you here in just a couple more days. Thanks a lot. Bye.